Okay, welcome to the podcast. Former Vancouver Canucks skills coach and now regional manager of player development, British Columbia. We're super excited to welcome to the podcast, Glenn Carnegie. How are we doing today, Glenn?
I'm doing great. You guys, it's good to be on here. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, so pretty excited to be on here. I know some of the guys you've had on there.
Well, this is our first podcast since the Christmas break, so it might be a little bit rusty.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get by.
How are you gonna ever fit that title on a business card? You gotta break that down somehow.
Yeah, I'll use abbreviations. I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm sure we'll abbreviate to something.
Hey, has anybody made the joke yet? Regional to the manager from the office?
It's been pretty quiet. It's been pretty quiet, honestly. I've only talked to Johnny Cara a little bit and Jeff Leader. So I'm sure Leitz will come up with something. I've known him long enough, so it won't take him long to come up with something for me.
Yeah, have you seen Leitz's new haircut yet?
Well, I saw a video of him getting his new haircut, but I haven't really seen it since. But if anyone can pull it off, it'd be that guy.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe that he kept the skullet going for about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. That was the impressive part.
Yeah, well, who's gonna say anything to him?
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
He just gets away with whatever he wants.
Yeah.
So Glenn, let's get started here. Why don't you take us through, how you got into skill development, and maybe take us back to when it all got started for you.
Yeah, well, it was back in Winnipeg, and I was working at Focus Fitness with Jeff Wood and became a partner with him. And we did obviously off-ice conditioning and then on-ice as well. And then we kind of grew that business up. And then when the Moose came back, we ended up becoming the strength and conditioning coaches for the Moose. At the same time, I was doing conditioning with the Selkirk Steelers and then the Winnipeg Thrashers. So we had the midget level, junior level, and then we finally broke into the pros with the Moose. And Coach Elaine Vigneault was there at the time, and who's a great guy to work with. And at that point, I started doing training camps with the Canucks and going in and doing different things with their strength coach Roger Takahashi. And then they asked me if I wanted to come up and be an assistant strength coach at first, and so I did that. And then at that time, Vigneault knew the guys I'd worked with in Winnipeg, like the NHL guys from Winnipeg, and what I was doing on the ice and having skating injured guys and all that. And he just asked if I'd be interested in a role as a skills coach. And, especially at the NHL level, I didn't really know at that point. There wasn't too many guys doing it full time. And I don't think too many teams have full-time guys right now still. But, I kind of asked him what he had in mind for it. And he said, well, I don't know, you're the skills coach, you figure it out. And so that was 13 years ago. So I started as assistant strength coach and on ice skills. And then when John Tortorella came in, it just became more on ice skills. And I was out of the gym for a little bit. And that's been the last, 6 years, I guess, of just doing the on ice skills with the Canucks. So it's been a bit of a journey.
You said Elaine Vigneault kind of gave you kind of free reign to, roll with it how you wanted to. Did you find it different working for Tortorella? Was he similar or was he more structured?
It's every coach. I've been there with 4 different coaches, so they're all a bit different. With Tortorella, it was a little different because he came in and didn't know me at all. So it was tough at the start because now all of a sudden the things I was doing and comfortable doing it, it kind of was like, whoa, like I had to earn his trust a little bit. So it kind of wasn't as involved right away. And then I just had to build it back up again, earn his trust. And then, kind of understanding what our players needed and showing them video. So I became a lot more into not only just working with guys on ice, but doing a lot more video with them. If some of my ice time was pulled back a little bit, you know what I mean? So I always kind of tried to find a way to be relevant and to find a way to help our players. And I guess kind of once the coaches saw what I did, and it just kind of evolved each time with different coaches.
What's the biggest difference that you see in the player that when you first started to the player today? Like, what's the biggest, whether it be skill or mindset? Like, how do you perceive players nowadays compared to when you started?
Well, first and foremost, it's speed. I mean, like the guys all can skate. Doesn't matter if you're 6'4" or 5'10". You gotta be able to skate. And the agility of the players, and it's incredible. Like you watch a player like Quinn Hughes now coming up, and the things he does with his edge work and his skating, it's incredible. So that I think is probably the biggest difference. The mindset is a little bit different. I think you have to talk to the players a little bit differently, and make sure that they understand you're not criticizing, you're coaching. And I think it's a little bit more, the players are way more knowledgeable, I guess. And that's within 12 years that I've been there. They have so much information. They have access to stuff on Instagram and all that. So I think those are probably the 2 or 3 biggest things for me.
So when you first started, did you find that because you said there wasn't really much, I mean, even nowadays that you said like there's not, NHL teams don't have skills coaches or full-time skills coaches. Did you find when you first started that you had to earn the guys' trust too? Like maybe they hadn't done lots of skill development as kids?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was my biggest fear. I mean, I didn't play in the NHL at all. So, who am I to tell these guys what to do? But I think what really helped is I came up with a lot of the guys from the Moose. So, Alex Edler was with the Moose, Alex Burrows, BX, Ryan Kessler. So I had that relationship with those guys already, and they kind of knew the things I did and how I work. So I think that was a big help when I got to the Canucks, where I knew those guys really well already. And then, and again, I think with those guys, if you're confident and you can show them why what you're telling them is going to help them, they're all in. It doesn't matter where that source is coming from. If they believe what you're telling them can help them, they'll buy into it in most cases. So
through your time in Vancouver, any player that you worked with that maybe kind of taught you something?
all of them. I mean, that's been the most exciting thing for me, working in the NHL with the players, and not only the players as on ice, but the people they are off ice. I learned how to work, what it takes, how to be a professional every day. And I think those are things I learned from them, especially. I mean, working with the Sedin twins, those guys were the best people you'll ever meet, the hardest working guys, never complained a day in their life. And even just picking their brain on, there's lots of things they did on the ice where it's nothing I would ever teach players to do, but for them it works. And, it was just the way they thought the game made them so exceptional. So being able to talk to those guys, and even, over the last few years with Bo Horvat, really spent a lot of time with him, and, just seeing the process he goes through every day as starting as a 19-year-old till now being the captain. Again, I think the biggest thing I would learn is to be a pro every day, to show up for work every day. And, there's the old saying, there's no bad days in the NHL. And that was the big thing. Again, a guy like Alex Burrows too. Guy played East Coast, American League, and probably scored some of the biggest goals in the franchise history. And he's just a guy who loved the game and was willing to learn. And I think are the biggest things where I think you can learn from anybody. And those guys kind of showed me that through the way they prepared themselves.
So how important is it for you to establish, a bond with the players that you're working with off the ice?
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, they have to respect you, and you have to earn their trust for sure. So I think relationships and coaching is probably the number one thing. If you don't have that, then there's no point going on the ice, because they're just going to go through the motions as far as I'm concerned. And that's, even the guys I've started working with in Winnipeg, a lot of them are guys I still work with in the summers today. and still talk to them on a weekly basis through their careers. So I think that's one thing I was really able to do a good job with back in the Winnipeg days, is create those relationships. And, even the kids we were training and that, that aren't playing hockey still, I still keep in touch with them and have different connections with them. And so I think one of the big things for me is to help develop these young people, develop into good people. And so that relationship aspect would be huge.
Was there ever did you ever struggle with that fine line? This is probably coming from my coaches, being a coach background, but did you ever struggle with that fine line of working with a player and, then that, the relationship they would have with their head coach and then you being a skills coach? Was there ever that friction that you had to deal with a little bit?
Friction between the coaches and I, or
no, between like the relationship maybe between the player and the coach, and then you having to deal with some of that?
Yeah, no, not so much. I mean, I think, it's a little bit different, right? Like the guys are probably more forthcoming and would talk to me more about things than they would the head coach or that. So I think, again, that was a big role I would have played, as kind of being, sometimes the guy they would come talk to and sit in the office and just, talk about life or other things other than hockey. So I think that's definitely a role, and that was part of it for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it ever really caused any friction at all. And again, like, the players had to trust that I wouldn't go run into the head coach and say, "Oh, so and so said this," and "Hey, I know where he was last night." I think especially in my early years coming up here with those guys all at the same time, I would have been a lot closer with them than I am with the young guys now. Obviously, I'm a little bit older now, so I think it was just, again, earning their trust, and they knew, like, if I happened to see them somewhere, I would never say anything to the coach and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly, but
no, for sure. Just that, you're starting to hear a lot of NHL guys who have their skill coaches away from their coaching staff in the NHL, and there's always that relationship, and I know with the NHL coaches that don't, aren't very welcoming to that. And, but I think it just goes back to the trust and being a professional and knowing your role and what that's all about.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Like, that is, again, you asked me before about how things have changed. That's something that's changed a lot. Now everyone has a guy, right? So big part of my job would be contacting the guys that our players work with in the summers and all that. And so I think I would try and keep a relationship with them. But I know around the league, there has been occasions where, players, they're talking about on the power play, and their skills guys saying, "Well, you should be here," but that's not what their team system is. So I have heard of them being some friction like that. But I think my role with being full time with the team was to work on the skills within our system.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it a little bit different. So I can definitely see there being friction that way, when you're kind of on the outside and giving players information that doesn't really fit into the team structure. That could cause some friction for sure.
Was there ever any friction between, like you work with other NHL players on other teams? Did Vancouver ever have a problem with you doing that in the off season?
Not that I know of. No, like I think when I first came up, Mike Gillis was a general manager, and he knew what I was doing, and there was no surprise. I wasn't working with the guys during the season. I remember, I think it was my first or second year, and we were always in battling with the Blackhawks. And obviously I've had a close relationship with Taves for a long time. So I remember Vino was always, "You better not be going for dinner with your guy over there." And, it was more just tongue in cheek. But the first couple of years, even the players would get on me a little bit about that relationship I have with John. And, but that's kind of died down a little bit, but it was pretty funny. And I was overly paranoid about it. I'd go into Chicago and I was like, "John, I can't go for dinner." Like, and he would kind of just laugh and be like, "Oh, whatever." So
That's
it was
funny.
kind of funny. Yeah.
Maybe last thing we'll ask you about your time in Vancouver. If, a moment stands out from you're there over a decade, any moments stand out that you kind of think was a magical moment?
Yeah. Two. The first was the Burrows scoring again in that first first round, Game 7, overtime against Chicago. That was really, I mean, I was right behind the net where he scored, and that was probably the most exciting. And then BX's goal against San Jose, where it went off the stanchion there, and to go to the Stanley Cup final, that was an incredible moment that even as a staff, like, you'll never forget it. And I don't think again, and then even being in Boston, I remember going on the bench and warm up, and I was like, I remember I went on the bench and like the fans were like yelling at me, and it's like, me, like, and I was like, I'm out of here, man. Like, I had to get off the bench. It was intense. Like, that was a real intimidating rink. And then they came out to their black and yellow song, and I was just like, oh man, I don't want to go out there. So I think that was probably, as a, growing up and dreaming to play in the NHL and have those moments, that was, as close as I could get. And it was something I'll never forget.
Just one more quick question, because it kind of spurred me there. Did you spend time on the bench, or were you more up in the press box?
No, I was always in the early years when I was in the gym. I was, during the first period, I'd be training guys, like healthy scratches or injured guys, and then I'd go just stand behind the net for the second and third. And then once I was out of the gym, then I was always up in the press box. So the last few years I was sitting with myself, Manny Malhotra, and Ian Clark, our goalie coach, and Manny would have the headset. We'd kind of all give a little bit our tidbits of info down, but that was another great thing, was working with a guy like Manny, who again is off in Toronto now, and he's going to be a great coach in the NHL. He's just, dedicated, as professional as they come, and a smart hockey guy.
So when you were up in the press box, you were like, had access to all the snacks and the meals and everything up there then?
Yeah. Some rinks are better known for the good snacks too.
Yeah.
Like Montreal, getting the hot dogs. You always had the pyramid of hot dogs going up there.
Okay, so now let's kind of move to now. What we're doing is, you've taken a job with RINK Kelowna as the regional manager of player development. How did this opportunity come about for you?
Well, I think, the guys in Winnipeg there, I'm really close with Jeff Leader. I've known John Kara through working in the Hockey Canada stuff we've done. I had talked with Brad Rice long ago when the rink was just starting, when we had Focus Fitness going. So, I knew those guys pretty well, and I had heard that they had bought the POE there from David Roy, and I kind of just sent out some feelers to see what they had in mind and what they were doing, and then they kind of realized if I was interested in leaving the Canucks, and we just kind of started talking from there about what the opportunity would be. And it's a real tough decision for me. Obviously, I love being with the Canucks, and but just for family wise, and to be able to move out there, it was a good time for me. It was kind of time to move on and try something new again. So just kind of talks developed there, and it's been a long process, that's for sure. And working with Ryan Sear and John and Leader, they've been great, and have kind of given me a lot of opportunities to make my decision, and they realized it was a big one. So yeah, it was kind of a long process, but a good one to go through.
Now, you touched on family, kind of, it's a good time to move your family. Any other draws for you to join the RINK team, or was that kind of a major one for you?
No, I've kind of been keeping my eye on what the RINK's been doing. Obviously, having been owning Focus Fitness back in the day, and kind of seen the RINKs develop, and I really like what they're doing. I like the science they're putting behind it with Jeff Leader, the things they're doing, John Kara, and just their willingness to provide the best opportunity for kids to develop. So that's what got me excited. And I think that's something I'm really passionate about. And I feel now, after working with guys in the NHL for so long, now, I can really talk to the kids about what it really takes. And so I think it's a really good mix, and I'm really excited about what they have in mind up in Kelowna.
Just touching on there what you said about working with NHL guys now going back and going to be working with the age group that you will in Kelowna. what would be the first piece of advice that you would give like a young aspiring hockey player? What would be the first thing that you would talk to them about?
Man, that's a tough question because there's so many things. Like, I think the big thing is like kids think they work hard and they think they know what it takes, but they have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing even to make it, but it's another thing to stay in the NHL. And you have players all over the world, working hard, just as hard as you are. And, I think the young guys who come in with us, it's a quick awakening, when you're all of a sudden you're next training beside Alex Edler, who's just a horse and who just works and, is a professional. So I think that's the biggest thing is for them to be humble and to not think they have it all figured out at this point, if I can say it in a nice way.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things is just go in kind of with your ears open and your mouth shut and enjoy the process.
Put your head down and get to work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I always say there's no magic potion. It's hard work.
Anybody that you've worked with along your journey that may not have bought in right away, but then saw what it took and then bought in?
Yeah, you know what? I think a guy like Yannick Hansen comes out to me where I always given a hard time about consistency and, when things weren't going great for him, well, then he came and he worked hard in the gym. But when things were going well, he kind of, just forgot about that stuff. And I think for him, it took him a little bit to figure out to be a full-time NHL player, that it's every day. And you can't just kind of pick and choose when and I'm not knocking Yannick or saying he didn't work hard or anything, because he did. But I think for him, he had to really understand the consistency it takes to do it day in and day out at that level. So I think that would be an example of that. I'm sure there's some other guys, but and I also think like that to a lot of guys that's the difference of them making the NHL or staying in the American League often is just figuring that part out.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. Like when we see guys, a lot of times when I'm working with junior guys, have them stick around to watch the NHL guys and the pro guys on the ice, just so they can see that. I mean, there's a huge difference, right? Like every rep means something, and you can really see the professionalism between. And we're talking high-end junior guys, but that's one thing that I've always noticed where it's like, going on the ice with junior guys and being like, wow, these guys know how to practice, and then going on the ice with the pros and me being kind of shocked with how much of a difference it is.
Yeah, it's a whole, and again, I talked about the speed. I mean, I would go down and be in Utica for 10 days and be in 4 or 5 of their practices on the ice. And then I'd come back up and be on the Canucks practice. And the speed difference was just, and it's even from that level, it's miles apart. And just like the crispiness of the passes and like it's just, speed is huge.
So what are some things, Glenn, we'll get you on your way right away here, but what are some things that you hope to accomplish with the RINK Kelowna program?
I'm kind of just starting to wrap my head around it and get thinking about that a little bit more. I just wrapped up with the Canucks here. But I think right away is just a consistent skill development plan, where I don't think it does kids much good to, work on skills here and there and not have a plan to it. I kind of really want to set development plans and even go as far as individual plans for players and development plans. I think the one thing it's easy to just go out and run a skills practice, but to run one that's progressing to the next thing, what is important for that level player. And I may be rambling a little bit, but John, Karen, and I have talked about, the milestones and, working back from your milestones. Okay, at this level, we want all the players to be able to accomplish this A, B, and C. And how do we get them there? Instead of just kind of like, well, let's do that. Let's do this today. It's going to be a progressed skill development plan. And I think too, like when I talk about skills, it's it's not always, I mean, for me, the last, 5-6 years, it's been less about puck handling things and more about details and picking pucks off the boards and, teaching them some principles of a rush where it's kind of those basic fundamentals that from those now you can add the creativity and, but once that player needs to really go step by step, a progressed plan. So in a long-winded answer there, I think that's kind of the first thing is to really, get connected with where they're at and develop plans to help them develop to the levels they want to get to.
It's great. Chu, you got any other questions?
Well, I have one question. I heard this like you'll get accustomed to the RINK training center and employees that work in Winnipeg and in Kelowna, but there is this like story going around that John Kerr is making you put up a picture of him in your office. Is that true?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, but he's got some pretty good hair, so he can get, if he sends me one, I'll put it up for sure. No problem.
Get it autographed.
Yeah. Well, I'll send it back to get autographed if it's not.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and
Glenn,
I also,
thanks.
I was listening to you guys one time. Did you guys ever do the beep test, by the way?
We didn't. Not. We're going to do it in the new year.
The COVID,
yeah.
COVID took the, we had to go to the rink, so we couldn't do it. So. Right.
Well, I look forward to hearing those results. I know Andy a little bit too, so I was kind of waiting to see who won that challenge.
Well, I think Andy, like I said this before, Andy will win. Okay, because he's just an all-around athlete, and but these guys give me no credit. They think I can't, I'll have a good time, I'll tell you that much. Even if you have to drag me off the ice, get the defibrillators ready, I'll be there.
You gotta just get it out.
That's right.
I've watched leaders come up and done that test with our Canuck guys for years too in development camp and so it's kind of a mainstay up here as well. So it's a grinder.
Yeah, well, we'll keep you in the loop on how those results turn out.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
Well, Glenn, thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate you taking time. We know you're a busy guy right now making the move to Kelowna, but we'd like to, welcome you to the family, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Oh, great. I'm glad to be here and glad to be a part of it going forward. So yeah, I'll be up there soon.
Awesome. Can't wait.